to the Masterclass series of Being Future Ready. We are extremely excited in April of 2023 to be a part of the Digital India Dialogues. And before we begin, we'd like to quickly share a brief introduction of all our partners. Of course, Digital India Dialogues is an initiative where we are going to look at how capacities are being built, and it was started in May of 2021. To give us a little more brief and understanding, I would like to invite our CEO for NEGD, National E-Governance Division from METI, as well as Digital India Dialogues, Shri Abhishek Singh Ji, to come and give us a quick introductory understanding of Digital India and NEGD and how we are associated with our masterclass sessions in it. Shri Abhishek Singh Ji, please.
Thank you, Purabhi, and it's an honor and privilege to welcome Rajiv Chawla sir, Prakash Kumar, and Venkatesh Ji to this edition of Digital India Dialogues Masterclass. I'm grateful to the Wadhwani Institute of Technology and Policy and IIM Bangalore for conceptualizing this and making it a part of the Digital India Dialogues. As we all know, Digital India Dialogues was started a couple of years back and we did that during the pandemic, at the peak of the pandemic, when we felt that building awareness and advocacy about good initiatives that's happening across the country, as also demystifying the emerging technologies, especially AI, blockchain, IoT, is very, very essential in order to understand how these technologies work and how it can be used for improving governance or integrating them in various applications. Over the last 2 years, we have had several eminent speakers from within the government, from industry, from academia, coming up and sharing their insights on several key subjects. Mainly what we do is that we get practitioners who share their experience about implementing any project within India or anywhere in the world. And then they also share about what challenges that they have faced, how they have leveraged technology, and how it has led to transforming governance. So that has been the prime objective of Digital India Dialogues. And when I came to know about the Masterclass series of IIM Bangalore along with WITP, my immediate reaction was that this aligns so well with the concept of Digital India Dialogues. And if we leverage the eminent speaker like what we have in Rajiv Chawla sir, then it will really, really help us in getting to know more about it. All of us are aware of who Rajiv Chawla sir is. He has led the implementation of several transformational projects in Karnataka. He is implementing projects in Agriculture Ministry right now, and we are always benefited by any interaction that we have with him. In fact, I personally must say that any talk with him, even on phone or meeting him, gives you so much of knowledge and insights into what to do, how not to do, and the do's and don'ts and practical tips. He goes beyond theory and he comes out with real practical ideas and tips to implement projects. So we have none of that. And he is one of those who implemented an e-governance project before e-governance and Digital India became mainstream. Bhoomi was one of the first key large-scale e-governance projects was implemented. And of course, he was talking about Bhoomi and Kutumba. He has several other things. Wish we had time and he could have spoken about fruits also and other ideas that he has. So I would welcome Rajiv Chawla and thank WITP and IIM Bangalore for collaborating with the National E-Governance Division for this edition of Digital India Dialogues Masterclass. And we can't wait to hear from Mr. Rajiv Chawla sir.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really exciting because that clearly sets the tone. We are definitely looking forward for how to implement projects and have that readiness in terms of adopting digital transformation in the government. I would now like to quickly share the quick agenda for all of us. We are going to have a quick introduction also from IIM and WITP. And we are, of course, going to deep dive into the topic for today's masterclass and welcome our speaker. For now, I'd like to invite Venkatesh from IIM Bangalore, the CSITM team, to quickly share with us what CSITM really does. Venkatesh, over to you.
Thank you, Purabhi. Good morning, all. I'm Venkatesh Balakrishnan. I manage the Center for Software and IT Management. On behalf of IIM Bangalore and CSITM, it's our pleasure to extend a warm welcome to the speaker for today, Mr. Rajiv Chawla, Prakash Ji, Abhishek Ji, and the entire of Wadhwani Foundation and Digital India teams. and all the participants. Let me give a 1-minute introduction of CSITM. As you all know, IIM Bangalore is celebrating its Golden Jubilee year this year. And incidentally, this is the Silver Jubilee year for Center for Software and IT Management. The center itself was started way back in 1998, and it has a huge global network of resources and has been serving as a hub for open exchange of information among academia, government, and industry. And that way, this masterclass series is very important because it involves government, it involves technology, and it involves management. And it has a huge network of professionals from all over. And the focus is contemporary topics such as artificial intelligence, digital transformation, digital product management, digital governance, and things like. And chairperson for the center, Professor Shankadeep Banerjee, is actively teaching software product management. And we conduct varied events. Some of them are residential, and some of them are smaller events, and some of them are series of events. And one event that has made a mark is this masterclass series, and we have had very exciting talks in the past, and we are going to have one more exciting event today. And with that said, I welcome you all again and hand it back to Ravi.
Thank you so much, Venkatesh, for that introduction, and congratulations on the Golden Jubilee for IIM and Silver Jubilee for CSITM team. I would now like to invite our CEO for Vadhvani Institute of Technology and Policy, Shri Prakash Kumar, to quickly introduce who we are, what we do. So over to you.
Thank you, Bhoomi. Let me first welcome Mr. Rajiv Chawla and thank him for agreeing to be part of this masterclass, which we started last year as a supplement to what we do, which is skilling of bureaucracy. We started this program in November 2021. The large part of it is undertaking skilling programs, 2 days or 3 days training program on new and emerging technologies. And all these are classroom-based in partnership with Capacity Building Commission, Central Training Institutes, as well as Trade Training Institutes, done on pro bono basis. And apart from doing these training programs, we also help with the trainees, the officials who attend these training programs, to convert their ideas into projects, help them in writing, approach note, scope of work, and if they require, also in drafting the RFP so that they can start using these technologies in their departments, their ministries, for improving service delivery, as well as for measurement of impact. We also have a small policy unit, which does analysis of existing policies or draft policies, and we also write research papers. So that's the short description of this new initiative, which is a year and a half old under Vadhvani Foundation. And over to you, Purvi.
Thank you, sir. Without much further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest for today for the masterclass session on implementing large e-Gov projects and learnings from projects like Bhoomi and Kutumba. We are very excited to have Mr. Rajiv Chawla. I'd like to briefly introduce him before we give the stage to him. He's currently the Strategic Advisor and Chief Knowledge Officer for the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India, an accomplished civil servant for over 3 decades of experience, and he brings in the value and success that he's led for projects like Kutumba, the Social Registry of Karnataka, Fruits, the Farmers Database, e-Sahmati, the Consent Framework, GIS, GPS, mobile-based crop survey in Karnataka, Samrakshan, the online crop insurance portal, Bhoomi, a massive scale land records of over 70 lakh farmers. The Princeton University in USA, along with the Woodrow Wilson School for Public and International Affairs, have interviewed him and have extensively documented his work over the years on their website. Also, not to mention, he's the recipient of many noteworthy awards, like the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Civil Services in 2007, a Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIT Kanpur in 2007, the United Nations Public Service Award in 2006. He was also featured in the Forbes list of Guardians of the Flame bureaucrats in its Independence Day in 2012 special issue. He's also a CSI Award recipient for Best e-Governance State in 2005 and 2006. Also, give me a moment, sorry. He's also a recipient of the Commonwealth Innovation Award in 2002. Shri Chawla has received his bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur, and today he is going to spend time on two projects that were successfully led under his leadership. This talk will be divided in two parts. Part one is where he is going to talk about the Bhoomi project implementations and the lessons learned. And then it will be followed by Q&A for 10 minutes. So I will urge everyone to please write down your questions on the chat. We will also have the part two after the first part of question and answers, where Shri Chawla is going to talk about the Kutumba project, of how it was conceptualized and designed, what sort of rollout issues were involved. We also will invite questions for these. We will sift your questions through, and we will have Shri Prakash Kumar moderate these questions to Shri Rajiv Chawla ji. I also urge, while you all are participating through listening and your questions, if there are any specific topics that you think are relevant for you as the audience, don't hesitate to put those topics as well in the chat box that we can consider for our future sessions in Digital India Dialogue and Masterclass series. Thank you, everybody. Without taking too much time, I welcome Shri Rajiv Chawla ji to take the stage. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Purvi. Thank you, Prakash. And thank you, all others, Abhishek. So I thought I'll explain you these two works which happened, I got a chance to do, and especially the lessons learned. In fact, the first project which Purvi will display, Purvi, can you kindly show? Was done long back. It was actually done about 25 years back. It was done at a time when you had, there was nothing called e-governance at that time, and we got a chance to do this massive work. And what were the lessons learned? And some of those lessons still are relevant. And then, of course, we'll talk about the family database, which is order of the day. People are talking about it. Can it be done? What are the challenges? Yeah, kindly the next slide, please. Now, as I said, and I must say that I was lucky that I got 14 years to do this work. Should it have taken 14 years? I really don't know. I took 14 years. I was working on this project between this time, and perhaps if it was to be done now, it would have taken a little less time, but I'll show you as to how many components still remain to be done. Land is a very complicated thing. There were 100 crore data fields in these land records just in Karnataka. So you can safely multiply that by about 30 if you have to reach the India scale. Next slide, please. The data was extremely bad. And look at this data. Look at this data. How the records were, how they were written, how dirty they were. On the left-hand side, you see. How do you disguise this data? How do you even make out what is there? Keep in mind that we are talking about 1998. Windows 98 had just come. On the server side, you had Windows NT server. I'm sure many of you would perhaps not even have heard that. There was absolutely nothing called computer knowledge. There was only one e-governance project, which was railway reservation. Nothing else. There was, and of course, there was no connectivity. There was nothing. The bandwidth used to be, I remember, just 9.8 kbps on a modem, and which you had to connect to telephone line. There was no concept of data centers and so on. And of course, don't even talk about delivery of citizen services. There were no electronic services at all. Next slide. And then what was the problem statement, which of course even now remains in some places, that you have 10,000 village officials manning 200 lakh records in 30,000 villages. So you really are nowhere, because if you are 10,000 people in 30,000 villages means you are virtually nowhere. You can always share out there. So the copies of the land records used to be physically typed. I mean, there was no concept of photocopy also. They used to be written, I'm sorry, not typed, written. And imagine the drudgery in writing, and then of course the tampering of the records. The mutation means when you sell or purchase land, you have to do mutation. And there was no question of monitoring any mutation because it was all monitored. Manual system, analytics, you forget. Next slide. And hence the most important question which came, do you first clean the records and then digitize? And I showed you how unclean it was. Or do you first digitize and then clean? Now we chose the second path. We said we will first digitize. And then of course there were comments. Comments were, what has been done is garbage in, garbage out. Of course it was garbage in, garbage out. You cannot clean or correct records through administrative process. Each correction or each tampering which is done has to be undone through a legal process. And I'm happy that we went through this path, that we first digitized, and I'll tell you how, why I'm saying this. Next slide, please. What were the results? The result was that with about 5 years of work by 2003, you had all 177 tehsils, that is sub-district, live. There were errors. Of course there were errors. When you digitize 100 crore record, 100 crore fields, you are bound to have errors. And I showed you how they were sitting and digitizing. And of course, you therefore also digitize the tempered records. Records were locked thereafter. So thankfully, if you read all case studies of Bhoomi, and some of you who are in IIM, etc., must be reading about this even now as a case study. No more tampering could have taken place thereafter. But then genuine farmers suffered badly because each correction now required energy. It could not have been done very simply. In a manual process, they could have done. The village official, for various reasons, which I will not like to discuss here, could have undone that damage. But now, each damage was to be done through a process, and therefore people suffered also. But वो तो है when जब आप गेहूं पीसते हैं, तो उसके साथ घुन भी पिसता है. And therefore, the genuine farmers suffered, and I must tell you, they suffered for at least 10 years. It really required patience to get the record corrected. The process for correcting the record was very difficult, which should have been, I feel. But then, I mean, this is when you temper the record, undoing that tempering is not a very easy job. Next slide, please. And imagine, I mean, now you take it for granted, but I recall that in 2004, when telecenters came, and if you read about a thing called NLOGUE, NLOGUE, you will read that the first kiosk, the BBC made stories on them. There were nothing called kiosk in those days. There were no telecenters. And imagine 10 years before even Aadhaar came, that you had land records being distributed at village through a third party. In 2002, Mr. Pramod Mahajan visited, and then he said that Bhoomi would be nationally replicated. And what was important was that then people understood that e-governance needs to be driven. So much so that the first Prime Minister award, in that year only 2 awards were given, now of course they have a large number, was given to the e-governance project. I mean, that was path-breaking. There was something called e-governance. So that, I think Bhoomi contributed by way of, letting people know that IT and e-governance systems can help. Next slide, please.
Rajiv, can you come a little closer to the mic, I think?
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me, or you have a problem in hearing me?
No, it is better now. Just okay.
Fine. Kindly let me know if I am not being heard. Now, it led to digitization of urban property records, which is still work in progress. And now this is unfortunate for the nation, that in 2023, And I really feel bad about it. That even now, urban property records, that means people like me and you who are living in urban areas, are still not having urban property records. Now, the digitization of spatial data, that means maps, etc., the land parcel maps, individual land, village maps, still work in progress. And now Swamitva has come, which is building on the Bhoomi story. Of course, a mute question which always bugs me is whether it should have taken 25 years and we are still incomplete. As a citizen of this country, it really troubles me. And I wish that young officers who are hearing, the professionals who are there, should understand that the lesson from these slides is that we have still miles to go. That Bhoomi and the rural land records, of course, have progressed, but there is lots to be still done. Next slide, please. And Prakash, kindly let me know if you can't hear me. But what is important is that we never realized at that time, and I must tell you that at that time, I didn't know as to what all land records would do. And today we realize that more than the land records being used for regulatory purpose, what is more important is that it is being used for other purposes. And I would give you 3 slides on what Agriculture Ministry is doing on building a huge digital public infrastructure. Huge. It's going to help about 14 to 15 crore farmers, and that means about 75 crore people. Next slide, please. And in fact, it came in the budget speech saying that can we have a digital public infrastructure for helping the farmers problem? And of course, how do you help farmers if your lands are not in place? Next slide. And therefore, AgriStack is a new work which is building up on land records, and it is an ecosystem for delivery of digital services. And it's basically various databases and registries, which I will talk in last 3 slides which remain. And apart from data standards and then APIs, etc., for pushing this data into the ecosystem where players, private players can build the solution, which is typically what a DPI does. Next slide. Just to summarize, the AgriStack builds on the land records, as you can see in the right-hand side. For each farmer who has a farmer ID, we would have all his lands mentioned there, the GPS coordinates of each land, and then of course the crops grown on each of this plot. And thanks to Bhoomi type of projects, these 3 data sets which you are talking on the right hand side have now been possible. And if you talk to people who work in this area, would say that unless you had this data, you can't even talk about AgriStack, because that's the most basic registries. Next slide. And as you would see, these are 3 important questions which AgriStack solves, which thanks to Bhoomi type of projects are possible to answer. Are you a farmer? What are the lands you hold? Where are those lands? This is non-spatial and spatial data. And what are the crops you have grown? How do you capture the crops? That's the transactional data. Next slide. And for capturing crops, you have a IT-based system, which is GIS, GPS-based system, which again piggybacks on land records. That it picks up the data from the land records and understands who is the owner on a property, where is that property, and then ensures that the photograph and the crop data is taken only from that field. So I'm just trying to tell you that a new system to help 75 crore people is getting built by a system which was put in place 25 years back. एक बार अगर आप पौधा लगा दीजिए, बीज डाल दीजिए, तो भगवान की अगर मर्जी है तो कभी ना कभी उस पौधे से पेड़ जरूर बनता है. This is, I just wanted to kind of communicate that point through this. Next slide, please. These are some of the other photographs. I will not take time. Next slide, please. These are some other photos. Next slide. What are the lessons learned? The lessons learned that the wisdom lies in the complete ecosystem. At least I remember. And I'm talking about 1998, 99. There were no cell phones. I had given my home phone number to everybody. And then, of course, I used to hear everybody right from village official. And I heard and I realized that I am such a foolish fellow who doesn't know any domain of land records. It was a collective wisdom which helped. And I still believe that we really know nothing. So the lesson is we should hear people, and especially those receivers, those who will receive your services. Don't push tiger to the corner. I remember, although a little unethical, that when we stopped delivering, we said physical copies cannot be given. The challenge was that how will the village officials handle it? Now, we therefore told them, of course, informally, that come on, if you are losing money in giving land records, why don't you? I mean, mutations are still there. You can do the mutations. The idea was that look, you still have lots of control of that rent seeking. And after 5 years, we put FIFO, first in, first out. I and Prakash, we were together in IIT Kanpur. And we had heard of STAC, which is last in, first out. And here, last in, first out is what typically happens in many services. But we put FIFO there. And then, of course, we put it after in 2005. By the time people had understood that they can't give a manual copies, they have to give computerized copies only. Then they also understood that the mutation has to be done on a seniority basis. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
1 second, sir. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So now need to have legal system in place to protect the IT system. So we realized in 2002 that you need to modify the act, and the Land Revenue Act in Karnataka was modified to say that you will have only and only digital system. Writing those lines into the act itself, and in those years, 25 years back, was not very easy. I stayed there, and I must tell you, till 2014. So 16 years I spent on a project, and I am so delighted that God gave so much of time. The long-term sustain of the project requires that you have in-house people. And I remember that I used to train people. I used to go 7 days every day to train the village officials who were all appointed on a compassionate basis. And those 200 young compassionate people. And then, of course, 50 people who were on hardware training. There was no facility management. Nobody would maintain your computer. So we made them learn by going to the hardware training institutes as to how they can open machine, how they can replace parts. So all these things led to a long-term sustainer sort of work. Next slide, please. Devil lies in detail, at least for me. I think this is an extremely important lesson, that you cannot expect NIC to be the implementing agency. They are just guiding you by writing software. But who tells them what is to be written? Who gives the change request? Who does the impact analysis of the change request? Is all you have to do, because you are designing the system. And I remember I used to sit in flight. There was no connectivity, nothing. I had an IBM laptop. I will download. It was a client, client application with the server on the local machine. Write the test report in ink and give it. So I think devil lies in detail. Next slide, please. And this is all I had to say on the first part, and I would be very happy if I need to answer some questions.
Yes, sir. Spot on time.
So Rajiv, we have 9 questions so far. So let me start one by one. Some of them are on use of blockchain. And Soumya Bhumik, she says in 2003, how no data tampering was ensured. At that time, blockchain was not conceptualized.
Right. So I'm saying that you cannot change you can't change a data through a business flow. And that business flow meant that there would be a proper order, a judicial order, a quasi-judicial order through which any record could be changed, except by way of mutation. So if you sell the land, you can mutate it. So there will be what is called a mutation transaction. But then if a correction transaction had to take place, then you needed an administrative orders to change. Now, I'm not really talking about tampering of data at the back end. No, I'm talking about tampering of data when it was there in a manual fashion. Anybody could write on a sheet of paper. Now they could not write in that sense. Could you tamper at the back end? The answer is, of course, big yes. Why can't they tamper? But I'm not talking about that tampering. But that tampering happens only at a different layer. It doesn't happen at the front end layer. So I'm not talking about a tampering at the database layer, which of course can be controlled through blockchain, etc. I was only talking about tampering the way it used to tamper when the paper records were there.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. This is from Anshuman Kamila from Cabinet Secretariat. He says, I wish to ask Sri Chawla about political economy of digitizing land records. How did the government agree to invest in digitizing land records when the share of land revenue in state's revenue has come down drastically?
Well, very, very important question. Number one, the first important question, why did they at all agree to digitize? And I think kindly don't mind, but there were no antibodies. It was like AIDS affecting your body. There was nothing. Nobody knew what land records. I mean, nobody knew what digitization means. And I must tell you, when in 2008, I was working on a different project on the spatial data. I was finally thrown out of the survey department saying that he doesn't know how to behave. He fights with the driver. He gave poison to the driver. Because by now there was lots of antibodies in the system. And all those people, the interested parties, invested a lot of money in throwing me out of that place. But thankfully, in 1998, when Mr. S.M. Krishna was the chief minister and Mr. Naidu in Andhra Pradesh, they had a competition. I'm talking about, very long, old stories. Many of you will not be even interested. And at that time, so therefore, Mr. S.M. Krishna wanted. But the fun was that nobody really knew what they wanted. I mean, they didn't know the ramifications of it. And therefore, when I suggested that the manual system would be closed, when I said 15 rupees in 1998 as the user charges, nobody even understood this. So there was no resistance at all. Now, the second question, how did you fund it? I mean, first of all, there was no funding requirement. It was all done in-house, software in-house, data entry through data entry operators, which of course involved money of the order of 10-12 crore rupees, but that came through a centrally sponsored scheme.
Okay, Rajiv, let's go to the next question, which is again related to challenges and mindset. It's from Nakul Sodhi. He says, even today, after having GIS mapping, data analytics, and IT strategy and methodologies, challenges with mindset of officials is a big hurdle for digitization and adoption of e-modules. How to cope with same? So these youngsters are asking, how do you cope with this?
This is a big problem. The problem, and pardon me for saying that I have already retired, so I take the liberty of saying what I want to say, that yes, vested interests are there. And unfortunately, these vested interests have to be only handled through administrative or political will. You require either administrative or political will. And I would not like to name the chief ministers of some states.
So Rajiv is talking about mindset of officials. How do we change that? Even if technologies are involved, how do we enthuse them? How do we help them to go for these technologies?
So I was trying to tell that, and I'll take 30-40 seconds to complete. So I'm saying one, of course, is to push it from the top. I mean, you cannot, I saw a movie, I remember, where this fellow used to kill every child. And when he was killing that child, he used to tell him that, agar tu aaj mara, to seedha swarg jayega. And the child was not interested because he was not interested in swarg. He wanted to live in nark. I forget the name of the movie. It was a brilliant movie. Now here also, I mean, you can train them. You can do training for them. You can give lectures to them. But the fact remains that there's a lot of money in the system, and you therefore require administrative and political will to push hard-hitting reforms. Why in 2008? And I would encourage you to read about me on the internet, where demands were made that Rajiv Chawla has come from UP, he should be thrown to UP. But I know the reason, and the minister saying so. I mean, just imagine that how much of self-interest is perpetuating in the system. So while you try to kind of train them, Vadvani does a brilliant work, Abhishek does a brilliant work, SEMTs are there, you have so much of training, you have all this Karma Yogi coming. But I think that along with that carrot, you need a stick where you need to have a political and administrative will for doing the work.
Okay, so the next question is, what is one groundbreaking lesson that you learned in e-governance that you would like to share with young professionals?
I learned this, that you need to work very, very hard, that you need to be obsessed, that you need to be obsessed. Kindly do the work with all sincerity, all honesty, and being obsessed with the idea. And if you really want to do big projects, and I must tell you that, I mean, there can be many lessons, but why is this lesson important? In 35 years of my career, and Prakash and Abhishek know it, that I worked in e-governance area for approximately 18 to 20 years. I was an electrical engineer like Prakash from IIT Kanpur. I am sure they would have given me some other work to do. They posted me to energy department and they said, look, I am an electrical engineer, but my passion lies elsewhere. So I think if you love this subject and you are obsessed about it, you would be able to reach success. Other items will automatically come to you. Is one very, very important lesson which I have learned.
Rajiv, the next question is from Seema Narula, and she's basically asking about how do you take into confidence the end users. The question is, how did you convince the users, the farmers in this case, to become a part of it? What actions were taken to get them familiarized with the system? Was language and literacy a big issue at that time? So this is very important question from our stakeholders for whom we do all e-governance projects.
And I must frankly admit, I'm not a superficial person. I must frankly admit that at that time, we never reached out to the farmers. Never. Should we have? Should we have done that? The answer is, of course, big yes. But then 25 years back, when you're young, when the e-governance projects are new, I was not able to reach out. But I would still encourage you to read about some of the YouTube stories which are as old as 20 years and listen to farmers. It actually was hurting them. And incidentally, all these were assisted services. There was no downloading of record. There was nothing which could have been done manually in those years. And then, of course, they used to go to kiosks where they would submit applications for mutation and take copies from there. But yes, now when we are doing AgriStack, for example, which is for farmers, this is a very most important thing as to how do we ensure that the farmer groups are involved, how do we handle their things, and we are then working with the skill counseling, skill mission to see that how do we arrange for their training so that farmers know what they have to achieve. How do we hear them? So we talk to FPOs. We have committees in which FPOs are members. But to answer your question, at that time, we had not involved them. And I think that was not the right thing, but then we were too young to even understand what we were doing.
Purvi, how are we doing on the time front?
So we have another 6 minutes until we start part 2, sir.
Okay, so let me ask you another question from Amit Kumar Singh. Will this, meaning Bhoomi, be limited to private lands or government land, or will also be covered, as one requires to identify various government lands with different sets of criteria for development projects?
Very, very important questions. And needless to say, what did you digitize? So, I mean, one thing you should understand, it was a very, very basic and a very, very, trivial project, except the size, of course. In fact, I used to jokingly say it was just a donkey's work, nothing else. What was it after all? You had 200 lakh records, you had to put them on a machine. That's it. I mean, there was nothing very exciting about it. Those 200 lakh records were also involving all the government lands, because all these, except that these 200 lakh records, there were no other records. There was no other land also therefore. all lands had records. And when you digitize these lands, you digitize all lands, including government lands. Did you put flags on government land? Of course, yes. So today, if you go to Bhoomi's website, with of course constraints, and you say, I want to see all the government lands in a village, it would be shown. Now, those would be shown. Now, who is sitting there would not be known to you. Who is supposed to be sitting there is known to you. So, for example, if you have got Gaye wali land, Gochara bolte hain usko, so it will show that it is meant for cows, but actually are the cows there or somebody else there, machine would not know. Machine would not know. So therefore you can, and kindly keep in mind that when you talk about land records, you have two things. One is the non-spatial data, which talks who is there, what is the land parcel number. And then you have a spatial data, which means where is that land. So what was digitized in 2000 was the non-spatial data. And the maps were then digitized in 2007, 2008. So you can now go, and I must tell you that there are some mobile apps which have been released by government. You stand anywhere in Karnataka, and it will tell you on which survey number you are standing, and who are the owners of that survey number. Just stand anywhere. It's called Dishank. I think about 5 lakh people have downloaded it in Karnataka. Everybody who works on land knows about Dishank. I would again encourage people who are in Karnataka to try that. And you will see that both the non-spatial and spatial data is now available in Dishank.
Okay, this is from Sweta Tikade. She is saying, what was the scenario of data security at that time when you did? This is many years ago. And how did you take care of, especially the backend part, which someone had asked earlier as well?
So keep in mind, Prakash, at that time you had no, you did not have a web server concept. We are long back, 25 years back. So each tehsil had computers. And then you had a VSAT connectivity in 2005 when Mr. Pramod Mahajan funded the data center. And this data used to be brought, a copy used to be brought to the data center. Now the question therefore, and the primary data therefore was at tehsils, and you had 177 tehsils. Now the challenge was that these 177 tehsils had a backend there. So you had SQL servers lying everywhere. And you have to ensure that those SQL servers are, they are rugged, that they are secured. And then of course that the more important problem was that how do you ensure that unscrupulous people do not log in from the front end? I mean, kindly remember all these new things which you're talking. And I must tell you with pride, because you're asking, that in 2001, we introduced fingerprint biometric device for login. It had just been integrated with the operating system. And there were no fingerprint devices in this country. We got them from US and integrated them into the application, which meant that you could only log in on fingerprint and username password both if you are an authorized user. And I'm talking about 2001. Now, this meant that you cannot get into the system unless you have validated through your fingerprint. And we realized to our horror that there were people who registered on the second finger of the village official, some of these unscrupulous people. We had a concept of a consultant in every taluka. And that man would use the second finger of that fingerprint device to log in the name of the authorized person. Of course, we kind of logged it later when we realized. But I must say that people who are mischievous are always ahead of people like us. To answer, therefore, your question, that at the tehsil level, there was no interconnected system, there was nothing. So the tampering, whichever could have taken place, could have either taken place at the local tehsil machine or through the front end. Front end was logged with fingerprint. And at the back end, of course, this databases were there. Also keep in mind that it was very primitive at that time. I mean, nobody knew. There was computer science, Prakash would recall, was just there in a couple of engineering colleges. And the knowledge of people was less. I must, however, tell you that we have really not noticed till today, and I would encourage you to do some reading, that there has not been any threat to Bhoomi system till now.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. This is from Avinash Agarwal.
So just interrupting, time check, maybe this could be the last question.
Yeah, this will be the last question. So this is from Avinash Agarwal. He says, sir, may we have some joint team of land records, highway ministry, where both can work in coordination, and based on analysis of that data, better highway route can be decided where land acquisition cost will be less.
Who will not agree with you? See, the problem is, and Prakash and Abhishek would vibrate with me, I think, that the Department of Land Resources is not quote unquote exciting work to do. And it's the most important work. And if you really ask me how much of land record digitization has taken place in this country, I will say about 10%. I mean, I'm now working on AgriStack with all the states, and I can talk for years and years about the problems in the land records. And therefore, what you said, for example, is very important. But then you should have Department of Land Resources staffed with many good, brilliant people. But then that's government policy. And then how much has to be politically, this subject has to be given importance, is also something which will make more and more people excited towards it. But yes, highway people should connect to it. In fact, land is to be connected by everybody. Ease of doing business, for example, one of the important parameters was how quickly you can register land, how quickly you can change the khata. So everybody is worried from a ease of doing business point of view. But then how much work we are really doing internally, I'm sorry, but I'm a little cynical on that part.
Thank you, Rajiv. Now let's go to the second part.
Yeah. So this second part project is very exciting, and I would request you to kindly, this is contemporary work. This is so important for the nation. Prime Minister says we have to reach out to each eligible beneficiary. How do you reach out? And therefore, I have 30 slides in this, and I would require 30 minutes. Kindly be a little patient. And I would be very happy if I can help any one of you. It has happened in 2-3 states, work in progress, of course. And I think lots of work is required to be done from a consultant point of view, from officer's point of view. It is important. Abhishek is also working, Prime Minister office is also working. So next slide, please. So, when I retired as Additional Chief Secretary e-Governance, and in the last phase when I retired in 2022 February, it has been 1 year now. I worked for 5 years there, and I realized that unlike 1998 when I started a Department of e-Governance in Karnataka and retired there itself. I mean, I of course did some other work also. I realized that there are large number of databases, and I have listed them here. And many of them were Aadhaar seeded. Next slide. There were also databases which were not Aadhaar seeded, and typically transport, utilities, and many other, Anganwadi, and SECC, for example, socioeconomic caste survey. So you had huge amount of data lying in the government. Next slide. And still, everybody was unhappy and continues to be unhappy. Why? What is the reason here? Why are you unhappy when you're sitting on huge amount of data? Next slide. Citizen was unhappy. Array, God bless you. I mean, the last thing I would like to do is to go near government. It's so pathetic. Citizen had to resubmit paper certificates by scanning into the IT system. Earlier, you used to give physically, so now you give them electronically. I mean, I don't know whether this is really e-governance. We are waiting for Abhishek to become the Secretary IT and then see a drastic change. He has grown. He has become a tall personality. He should do something. But the question is scanning land record, is scanning certificates into the IT system when every time you apply for a benefit. I mean, is it good that you give your caste certificate every time you scan? And the fun is that they also have to get the certificate again. I really don't know why. You are studying in a school, after 2 months, you have to get another certificate for scholarship. After 2 months, again, if you are applying for some other scholarship, how are you treating your citizens? And illiterate and poor citizens were forced to apply for their entitlement. And God bless, for example, PM Kisan. You want PM Kisan people to apply for 6,000 rupees per quarter. Why, bhai? Why? Why do you want them to apply? Why you want them to apply? Next slide. And the poor people are the people who can never apply. I mean, the poor people whom it is meant for will never be able to apply. And the fun is, Prakash and others, that the so-called state government knew about them and eligibility, while the department did not. I'll give you an example. I showed you so many databases. I'll give you an example. You want an old age pension. A lady comes to you for old age pension. May I ask you, what is that you don't know about that person? You know about age. It is there in eKYC data. The PDS system has demographically approved eKYC done data of about 80, 85, 90 crore people. Income, you have an income database in Revenue Department in Karnataka for all the families. You also have land details. Why land? Because if you have to get an old age pension, you should not be above certain land which you are owning in your name. And how do you transfer the money? You don't need their account number. Thanks to Nandan Nilekani and team, you have Aadhaar as financial address. So may I ask any one of you as to what else do you need? And you still want that old lady to apply. Next slide, please. Take another case. And I don't want to waste time, but I can explain you for hours and hours together. You want Mr. Bhoomi started a new scheme saying, I want to give scholarship to a farmer's son, farmer's daughter. And he was told that there are 18 lakh people who can get the scholarship. And only 30,000 people applied. And then, of course, they came to Kutumba. And I'll give you the political economy of all this. Who is the father? I know in the PDS system. Who is father of whom? Is father a farmer? I also know this because I have a farmer's registry in Karnataka. What is a family's income? Because you don't give scholarship above a particular income. I know from the income database. What is financial address? I again know it. Why can't I give money on a suo moto basis to that farmer, which they finally did? And they could generate a list in a jiffy. And believe me, I mean, you can, of course, you can talk to people in Karnataka to find out as to what I'm saying is correct or wrong. And still we want children to apply. Why do you want children to apply when you have all the data pertaining to the child? Submit documents. That's worst. Submit. I mean, you want them to apply because the logic is, and pardon me for saying I'm not naming anybody, saying that if you give on an entitlement basis, then everybody will get the money. Of course, everybody will get the money because he's entitled. So therefore, what do? You let them apply. And most of them will not apply. I don't know. I mean, from a morality point of view, how wrong or how right we are, that you say that let a child apply. And child will not apply because he is unaware. He is so poor. And therefore, your expenditure will not go up. Compounded with the possibility of rent seeking, delay and discretion. So you apply, then somebody will approve. Arey bhaiya, what will he approve? Who is the father? You don't have to approve anything. What is the income? You don't have to approve anything. Financial address, you don't have to collect a passbook photo, but you still do. And that was the problem which I faced when we started in 2018. Next slide. Suffering of government employees. Now, all are not bad. Most of them are good. And look at their drudgery. You upload a document. When you upload a document in an electronic system, how do you know There is nothing called verifiable credentials, which we are now talking about. You are scanning and uploading. How do you know whether you have tampered with that paper? And unscrupulous people will submit all those papers. And then you will get tired. And I remember Prakash and I, when we were studying, that we were told the definition of work. And the definition of work, Prakash, was FD cos theta. And if we used to hear that if theta is 90, then you get tired, but the work done is 0. So you get tired in doing work at the end of the day. But the question is not you got tired. The question is, what is your productivity? And I'm afraid your answer is big 0. You are sick and tired. You have no work time left for productive work. Next slide, please. Now, the unhappy citizens make state government unhappy because the money is spent, but everybody is cursing you. You have no data for scheme formulation. I mean, you said that you want to give scholarship to children. Did you know? Or you said PM Kisan, did you know the number? Why you don't know the number when land records have been digitized across the country? Who are the farmers? How many of them? What if I give more than 2 acres? What if I give less than 5 acres? You should be able to know and budget for it. And then, of course, you have no concept of prioritizing need and poor based on deprivation score. You say, apply kar do. If you are eligible, then I will say okay to some, not okay to others because I don't have money. But are you prioritizing and saying your deprivation score is more, I'll give you first? The way you took admission in IIT, the way you take admission in colleges where you say your marks are more. Why can't the poor's deprivation score be seen? No concept. People don't even talk about it. People don't even talk about it. Very unfortunate for this nation. Next slide. And the fun is that when I looked at this problem, the solution was actually staring at us and making joke of us, saying, "Arey, you have so much of data. Why don't you use your own data?" That's it. I mean, what is Kutumba? Using the data. And then change policies of the government. We all know that when you talk about building blocks, what is called digital public goods, you also have these public goods as the policies also, the regulations also. So why can't you change policy of the government and say, I shall not seek data more than once? I shall not seek data more than once. Why can't you say that? When Estonia can say, you can't say. And then, of course, move to entitlement system where citizen does not apply. Arey bhaiya, you're not doing any favor. Why in PM Kisan people should apply? Do you want to give money to everybody? If yes, then why don't you dig into your database? PM Kisan says landed farmer registry tells you. PM Kisan says income tax pay. You have an income tax system. Why can't you look into the income tax system? Then you say he should not have been MP, MLA. You have a list of MP, MLA. It says you should not be a Gram Panchayat Pradhan. You know the data of Gram Panchayat. You say he should not be a government employee. You have HRMS systems everywhere. And you still want poor old person, a farmer, to apply for a small amount of 2,000 rupees or 6,000 rupees. And then, of course, move to selection of beneficiary based on deprivation score. Most needy first. Why don't you do that? Why don't you calculate the deprivation score? Next slide. And therefore, what did we do? And it was very simple. We had data of about 5.5 crore people. And believe me, sir, it took us just 2-3 years to bring this system. And kindly don't mind if I tell you that we did not spend a single penny except with the salaries which were being given to the people who were anyway there. No databases. I mean, of course, you use some database, but no ERPs of the SAP type. Go and find out SAP. Some of the states are saying you require 100 crore for doing family database. Pardon me, I'm saying it jokingly. You don't require 100 crore. You require just 5.5 liters of blood to do this work. You need obsession to do this work. And what did we do? We said, we'll connect all these databases. Now, how do you connect? Can you share Aadhaar? All those secrets I will not tell you. But then there are answers. Arey, you can't share Aadhaar. You can share hash of Aadhaar. Yeah. Hash of Aadhaar is not Aadhaar. Now, to anyway, systems have opened. You can share systems. 2022 circular of October says government is one. You can use data across the government. And this data was used to create a family database which was dynamic. No survey was done. It was dynamic. Why it was dynamic? Because it was connected to live transactional database. And therefore, it gets updated automatically. After all, the family database is not a database. It is a pointer to data. The data are lying in the respective departments. These are just pointers to the data. And of course, it is validated data from the source. Caste is given by the caste department. Income is given by the income department. The SECC comes from SEC. The housing comes from housing. The disabled comes from the disabled system. And therefore, it is most authentic. Next slide, please. Now, the attributes which are there in Kutumba, and I think you should all be excited because there is a business in this sector, and you need people like you to kind of do this for all the states. That the attributes which were there in the database are of these type: name, gender, date of birth, education, occupation, shadi hui hai ki nahi, parent details, disability. Then, of course, family attributes, caste, income, land holding, location of house. Every house location was captured. It was captured as a transaction. You anyway go to their house. Just capture the GPS coordinate. Because when they are in need, you need to reach out to them. Contact details, deprivation status, etc. Next slide, please. And this is just typically, look at the photo. Now, there's nothing great about this photo. It comes from the PDF. The photo is already there. And then, of course, what is the name? What is the date of birth? Is she a BPL family? What is the husband name? What is the mother name? Mobile number? Next slide. And then, of course, the family details of what is the caste, what is the category, are you a farmer, disability, pension, all the data comes from various databases. Next slide. They also created what is called a beneficiary registry system. The fun is again, look at this. You do a Aadhaar-based payment, but you don't have a detail of which family is hogging how much of money. I mean, that there are families who have not got a single benefit, and there are families who take most of the benefit. Is this fair? The problem is they are close to the politician. You don't have a deprivation score concept. They apply for every scheme. But the beneficiary registry tells you, next slide, please, that these are the families. Look at this family. Look at this family. The amount of benefits they have taken, this fellow has taken. This person's name is J.B. Nagaraju. And he takes these benefits. No, are you against Nagaraju? I am against this Nagaraju, against Rajiv Chawla, because Rajiv Chawla did not get a single benefit. Next slide. Now, what did you achieve by doing Kutumba? As I told you, number one, Kutumba was done in-house. There was nobody involved. Nobody from outside involved. No SAP, nothing. Now, what was the result? The result was it was integrated with the attribute source system. On a real time, the attributes, key values were updated. They were talking to each other. The systems were talking to each other. And this Kutumba system enables department to periodically verify eligibility of beneficiaries of the reckoning system. Imagine, you're giving old age pension to 55 lakh people and you spend 5,000 crore. Are you sure they are not dead? If they're dead, you are still giving. So if you see the next point, Kutumba ensured that the birth and death registry, and I must tell you, it's only Karnataka where the birth and death registry is seeded with Aadhaar. All births and deaths. And therefore, every time a person died, the registry would know that this person has died. And it would just push the data to all the departments saying, look, this old lady has died. Look, in this PDF, this name has to be removed. And similarly, when a person is born, a child is born, we told Anganwadi people that the child is born. Just look at this, it's so simple. if a person has purchased a land and her land is now above the cutoff limit, her old age pension can be stopped. The land database is anyway maintaining mutations, the work which was done in 1998, Bhoomi. Why can't you connect to Bhoomi and, of course, through a system called Farmers Registry and say she holds these many lands and therefore her pension should be cut. So everything becomes dynamic. Everything becomes dynamic. The Kutumba also broadcast the disease data to the department. This live certificate, etc., is not required. Have they stopped it? The answer is big no. They need to understand that I don't need the people to say that they are dead, because there are systems who will tell whether they are dead. Next slide. Now, this is another example. And as I promise, I'll finish it in 30 minutes, but it's very, very interesting. You know, you used to do SECC survey. You used to say socio-economic caste survey. And you used to say, I want to understand how many of you are poor, कहाँ पे बुढ़े लोग रहते हैं, किसी घर में कोई बच्चा काम नहीं करता है. And you used to send a team to do SECC. And that data, which is collected once in 10 years, is used by all of you for your schemes. I mean, so pathetic for this nation. It is really pathetic for the nation. How can you depend upon stale data? So what did we do? We realized that SECC pointers can actually be generated from Kutumba, which is a dynamic data. Next slide, please. Look at this. All the parameters, deprivation parameters you require are already there as a data field in Kutumba, and the source IT system is written. Next slide. What does that mean? That means that given a family ID, I can actually calculate their deprivation factors, which are as on today, not in 2040. You talk to Nagendra Sinha, who used to be Rural Development Secretary, that he was so excited that he said, Rajiv, we can do away with SECC itself. Look at this family, for example. Look at this family that you have the family number 3rd. Household with only one room, kacha wall and kacha roof. No. Like this. You now know, take the 4th case. He is deprived on all the parameters. They are only illiterate people. And mind you, we know they are illiterate because in our school database, their names are not there. So we know, are they SCSP? We know they are SCSP because we have a caste database. Households with disabled member, yes, because we have a disability ID for that member. So all I'm saying is that you know the SECC data from Kutumba. You need not do any survey to do that. And how much money you save, how much energy you save, and this deprivation parameters are dynamic. Next slide, please. Now, how has Kutumba helped citizens? Citizen doesn't have to fill any data. You just give your Aadhaar number, although it is a Kutumba ID. Kutumba ID is a functional ID, where Aadhaar is a foundational ID. You give your Kutumba ID or your Aadhaar number, and the data would be automatically filled because it is already there. Whatever is not filled only needs to be pushed. And I must tell you a very exciting thing, that once he fills that data, the data then gets verified. And that data then goes back into Kutumba. That means next time I will not ask that data. So the ask data only once. And Kutumba, therefore, gradually builds up as more and more people apply. As on today, I must confess, it is only for 80% of the families because those are the poor families. But rich families anyway don't come to government for seeking any benefits. Citizen self-service portal where they can see their data. If you don't allow citizens to see their own data, then what type of a registry you have? Next slide. And these are the registries where they can log in using Aadhaar authentication, single sign-on. Next slide. They can see their family details. They can see what is recorded against them. Next slide. They can see what is recorded against them. Next slide. And they can see what benefits have been given to them. Are they wrongly recorded? Because kindly keep in mind that this is this data on the basis of which we would be evaluating them. We may not even Reach out to them. If I do a suo moto benefits like we did for farmer scholarship, we'll not even ask you. So if this data is wrong, you'll be affected. So they can log into this, they can raise a grievance, the data can be corrected, all those things are there. Next slide. Has Kutumba helped the government? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Because there are now some schemes which are on entitlement basis. Kindly read the budget of Mr. Bhoomi this year. He said we would move to an entitlement-based system. Now, how you will move, when you will move, how many schemes you will identify, is something which you will have to decide. But at least they are saying that they will move to entitlement-based system. Means what? That you will not apply. That I know about you. That I know about your deprivation score. If I have a fund problem, I would pick up people from the top. And I know your financial address also because it is Aadhaar. So I need not collect passport. The only challenge would be having given the money to you, I have to communicate to you that the money has reached to you. वो बेचारों को पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि पैसा आ गया. So you have to communicate to them. And how do you communicate to them? Because you have their mobile numbers in the database. So the challenge is that the people should come to Kutumba and update their mobile number, else the message will go to somebody else. Of course, you can also give an advertisement in the newspaper. And please keep on looking for the money in your account. If you are these parameters, you will get a farmer scholarship. Now, responsive and dynamic inclusion into the beneficiary scheme made possible. Citizens don't have to apply. Next slide, please. Look at this. So if there is a child, now this is a national scholarship for minorities. Now they don't take any document.
Sorry to interrupt. Quick time check. We have 3 more minutes before.
So I will finish within three minutes. Don't worry.
Then we take questions.
So,
thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So if you see this, you just give your family ID, the whole data is there. So you don't have to give any application. You just log in, say, I want to get the scholarship. The question is, why should you say, I want to get the scholarship? Government can suo moto decide, but if they want you to apply, you can do this. Next slide. So these are the way likely inclusion lists can be generated for some schemes. Next slide. You can also wider coverage of beneficiaries. Obviously, it will take place. I will not take time because you now have a bigger list. Next slide. You can remove ineligible people because you know about them. Next slide. And this will show that likely exclusion list. So Kutumba does not exclude or include people. It is a department which does. Kutumba only gives electronic information to them. Next slide, please. Now, I have last 2-3 slides to just kind of learn lessons. And the lessons are that NIC and in-house resources are best. They are best. No or nearly nil expenditure on software writing. The domain knowledge was there. Of course, we took some design assistance from outside. But the whole Kutumba system was done in-house. Next slide. Of course, most difficulty is resistance to change within bureaucracy. Huge resistance at the senior level to change to entitlement system. Still that thinking, let the citizen apply, let the citizen apply, let the citizen apply. Traditional thinking. And then, of course, for any major reforms like this now did, political will is required. They said, the chief minister said, no, for this scheme, I want entitlement system to come. And the system came. I think this must be the last slide. Next slide. All of a sudden we realized that the metadata and data standards are so important when you're connecting databases. It's so important. This is the last slide. Location masters are different. People are not using LGD code. Names are written in a different fashion. Occupation values are different. So you have in e-Shrama, there is something. Masters are different. Narega masters are different. And therefore, I think Abhishek and others will have to do really hard work to see how this MDDS becomes a reality, that all schemes start using this. It brings out the clear importance of MDDS adoption or addition into the system. Thanks a lot. This was my last slide. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Prakash,
Thank you, Rajiv. So I have lots of questions in the Q&A, and let me start one by one. So the first one is from Rahil Talwar. He says, how are the respective digital certificates and documents being verified?
Kindly repeat the question.
How are the respective digital certificates and documents being verified?
As I told you, this question is relevant, but not relevant in the context of Kutumba. In Kutumba, you don't even take any certificate. The data is there. You issue a certificate and you want to verify a certificate. Why do you issue a certificate? You have the data. So why do you issue an income certificate if you are the consumer yourself in the government? So therefore, while I'll answer your question, I must say in Kutumba, this question is irrelevant because we don't need any papers from them. But
Okay.
of course, the question is important. If I give you an education certificate and you go to Punjab, how do you verify? That question still remains relevant. Now, what these people have done, they have done two things. One is that Karnataka brought out the rules for digital certificates in the year 2006 before METI copied it. Mr. Rao used to be additional secretary at that time, one from Surat. So what they do is that they brought QR code in 2005. You should read about it. It was called two-dimensional barcode at that time, where you actually put the data by digitally signing the data, and you gave a software through which the two-dimensional barcode can be read it. So the answer to your question is the same. You digitally sign and give the data, and that data can be checked. But of course, many people don't do this. They connect through API to the system and then take the data, whatever is required.
Okay, the next one is, how do the existing government system verify? Again, this is the same question, so let me just go to the next. He says, how did you meet the technical requirements for these projects? Also, how the processes continued in case of transfer superannuation of the workforce involved in these?
So I first of all, thanks to Abhishek. Abhishek, I am thankful to you. SCMT resources who are there and the NIC team. These two people actually did. NIC, of course, only wrote the code, and also SCMT. The documents were all written by people like us at that time. Of course, we don't write, the function. We write vaguely the functional requirement documents. The question is, documentation is there, great detailed documentation. In fact, Niti Aayog has also written a lot on Kutumba. I can share that. But if you ask me what happens if you get transferred, I don't really know. One, I think in Karnataka, the culture has come. I don't know about other states. In Karnataka, culture has come. So my successor, after I retired, a brilliant officer, has continued. And then, of course, there is such a critical mass that you connect Bhoomi and Kutumba to so many systems that if you close it, there would be a huge problem. I can't answer more than this, but the more and more you are connected to other systems, your system would then become indispensable. I can discuss offline if there are many more questions on this point as to how do you ensure continuation of the project itself.
In fact, Rajiv has just now mentioned that's the key. If the system gets embedded, it's very difficult to undo it. That's the beauty. Yeah. The next question is from Anshuman Kamila. He says, now that various states are developing their own versions of social registries, how can we develop one at the national level? Will it be a de novo project, or we will have to settle for a system that has minimum standards common to all state level social registers?
So I really don't know why you even talking about a national project. You need registry of citizens with their attributes. That system can happen at the state level. Every state would own. You use that data, right? Why do you need a national system for services which are delivered at the state level? So I beg to differ. We have been saying that these systems should be state systems, but they should be developed on some simple standards so that when Government of India wants to collate some data, it should be possible. So kindly understand, you want to know about Rajiv Chawla. Rajiv Chawla lives in a state. He doesn't live in a center. So you pick up his data from there. You pick up his data from here. He cannot live in two states at the same time. He can have data from two states. For example, you can have land in two states. That's perfectly okay. And I would dig out that data from the farmer registry if he has land in two places. So therefore, I submit to you and we can discuss this. And I think this is the thinking of the government of India also, that every state should develop a registry. And of course, by connecting to central systems also, like Narega, e-Shrama. And then, of course, all central and state systems can use those registries.
I mean, the question was more on also the metadata and the standards, because if they don't do it, if different states maintain different, then again, pulling data at one place, especially like
100%.
two land records from 2 places, someone can have in 3 places also. That will become
You're
difficult.
correct. You're correct.
Yeah.
So as I told, that the METI is actually coming up with some minimal standards and minimum fields, and then suggest to the state that they should keep that in mind. You're correct.
Okay, so Ansuman has asked another question. Since the philosophy of Aadhaar Act is against profiling, and social registries can very well be used for profiling, does the project of social registry face a legal hurdle?
I'm just asking you, kindly go and read Aadhaar. Where does it say profiling? Does Aadhaar use the word profiling? I don't know who told you. So this is I think I think there's some problem in understanding this. There's nowhere that it talks about profiling. It doesn't talk. In fact, 2022 circular, and I would share it in the group. It actually talks about sharing data amongst departments. It talks about sharing data amongst departments. So therefore, kindly understand that it is not against profiling. At the max, I can say that Aadhaar is silent on profiling. And if it is silent on profiling, I don't know, you call it profiling. I don't call it profiling. Yeah. I'm not wanting to know where you went by aircraft. I don't want to know what you are purchasing. I only say that your caste is this, your income is this, so that I can help you.
Okay, so this is a question from Abhishek Sharma. He says, in case a state or UT wants to implement Kutumba, what approach would you suggest?
You have to connect.
You have discussed most of it, but again, if you want to highlight something.
See, Prakash, all I'll say, Prakash, is that you have to connect databases, and then you should have good policies. I don't really think that there is any technology involved in this. You have to connect databases, you have to find common identifiers and connect. But of course, I am sure that Abhishek and his team of SCMT and the Secretary Governors of Karnataka would be very happy, as he has been helping various states who visit Kutumba. But if you really ask me, there's no rocket science, there's nothing in this. It's just collection of data. And more than that, I think on the usage side, you will have to have policies, etc. But Kutumba itself, evolving Kutumba itself, is just collection of data.
Okay. Again, the related question is from Prakash Mahanta. He says, sir, we are still working in silos. Interoperability is the need of the hour. Outcome framework needs to be implemented and data sharing made fully mandatory. These needs to be addressed. He wants your views on this.
He's correct. He's correct. Now, this is the problem that, so two things he raised. Number one, he says that you need to share data. And number two is interoperability. Interoperability I showed in the last slide. But I think this mentality of sharing data, is so difficult, Prakash. It's so difficult. I'll not name ministries. But then people just don't want to give connectivity. Unlike e-Shrama, for example, who feel proud of sharing data. So I think Abhishek and others will have to put a danda and see that all the ministries give data through APIs to the consumers as in state governments and other departments. But yes, interoperability, MDDS standards will have to be followed. So I would be very happy to talk separately to people who want to listen on AgriStack as to how is this AgriStack going to be a system which would be built like an API where you will have complete standards and standards listed the way Health Mission is doing, for example, and how land record systems are getting reformed. And I'm happy about it. Prakash spoke about it, that how do you make farmer registry if land records are of different type? And I can talk separately about it.
Okay, there is another question which is, though you had clarified, it is about the concept of family, which is dynamic, which is changing. Then how do you take into account this particular fact in Kutumba? So if you can explain that.
Prakash,
lots of people will ask that.
Prakash, it's a very, very exciting question. If you talk about PM Kisan, it is husband, wife, and minor children. In some other, it may be husband, wife, and unmarried daughters and minor children. Now, minor sons. So the answer to your question is that it has to be dynamically created. You should have enough. For example, in Kutumba, and I must confess, it is not built still. They have to work on this. That you should know father Aadhaar of everybody. Now and mother Aadhaar of every person. That means you can dynamically find out, depending upon the definition, as to what is a family. So actually, it should be called, instead of family database, it should be called citizens database. And family gets created dynamically depending upon the scheme definition. But then you need enough information to connect different people and make dynamic family. We can talk about it. It's an involved subject. I would be very happy to help anybody if anybody wants to know more on it.
Okay, there's another question. Has Kutumba been implemented in any other state apart from Karnataka?
So the answer is, instead of Kutumba in Kannada means the family. So we have Parivar Pehchan Patra in Haryana, which is on an entirely different approach. They are doing household survey. Now, I am personally opposed to it because household survey is not a data which will be owned by respective departments. For example, caste should come from the caste department. Education should come from the education department. But there are different solutions. So Parivar Pehchan Patra is one which is happening. And of course, you have old systems like, this Bhamasha in Rajasthan, you have. So there are 2-3 states which have done the work. But if you talk about the most painless problem of doing, it is connecting databases. But then that depends upon the maturity of the system, how many databases you have. So if your e-governance is bad, then Kutumba type of systems are more difficult to come.
Okay, there is one more question, which is, he says that in this particular project, what was the most critical challenge that you faced in Kutumba? You talk about Bhoomi, you talk about this. Yeah.
The most critical challenge here was to share the data. That in the beginning, they said, we cannot share data because there is Aadhaar. And then we got a UIDAI order saying that you can actually merge and make MIS reports. I mean, what is MIS is a nebulous word, by using hash of Aadhaar. So once I got that with my batchmate being there as CEO, UIDAI, Pankaj, we got that in clarification that on the basis of hash of Aadhaar, you can share data. I think we were then able to get data from all the departments electronically and merge them. The second biggest problem was mindset, moving to entitlement-based system, which has still not happened. It's only selectively for some schemes.
Okay, so we are at the top of the hour. There are some suggestions, like Ansuman has suggested that I thank CSITM and WITP for organizing these sessions. Apart from dealing with technology topics, I request some sessions on interdisciplinary issues such as intersection of technology, law, sociology, like issues on platform, gig economies, etc. may be taken up. Thank you, Ansuman. We'll take that into consideration, and we'll certainly try to get, especially the intersection parts are very important, and provided we get a reputed speaker who can speak at this forum. Over to you, Purvi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Rajiv Chawla ji, for this insightful session, giving us a deep dive peek in the 2 projects that you discussed. There are a lot of questions that we've gathered, and we'll be happy to share them with you to gain insights. With your permission, sir, a lot of our audience is interested to take a look at the deck. With your permission, maybe
kindly do that. Most welcome. Please do that.
Fabulous. So it's clearly been an exciting session. We are hooked in terms of what is in store with the Digital India Dialogues series that are going to come up in the next few months. Shri Rajiv ji, thank you so much for coming today and joining us. This is the first session that we have partnered with Digital India Dialogues and NEGD. We are excited to kickstart this partnership with your session. So we wholeheartedly thank you for coming here today and sharing such deep insights on these projects that are now not just gradually but rapidly becoming a very popular area of interest and focus. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today. We also want
Thank you, Purvi. Thank you.
We also want to thank our partners, Shri Abhishek Singh ji and the entire NEGV team, Satyamina ji and Pooja, Puneet, and the rest of the team members. Also, a big thank you to all our partners from IIM Bangalore, Venkatesh, always a big support. And to our wonderful audience, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for the upcoming sessions that we are going to have from Digital India Dialogues, Vadhwani Institute of Technology and Policy, and IIM Bangalore, because there's a lot coming. Don't hesitate to please share your areas of interests for topics that you may want to see certain masterclasses in. We'll be happy to have those sessions. The entire live stream is available. We will share the link as well as these decks in case you wish to take a look, and also the emails that you can reach out to. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. If we have surpassed the 1 hour slot, that means we've done really well. Thank you very much for your time and your presence. See you next time. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.